Today, we will be discussing one of the earliest innovations in production and how it influenced society. But let's start with a story. Imagine the early 20th century. The automobile is no longer a novelty, but an expanding industry. At the forefront of this revolution was Henry Ford. His vision was to make the automobile accessible to the masses, and to achieve this, he embarked on a revolutionary transformation of manufacturing. Before 1913, building a car was a complex and time-consuming process, often taking over 12 hours per vehicle. Back then, automobile manufacturing followed a traditional craft-based approach. Skilled workers would assemble entire cars piece by piece. This reliance on the craft system of production, where the expertise of individual workers determined the rate and quality of output, inherently limited the scale and affordability of automobiles. But Ford and his team recognized that this method was too slow and expensive to meet his ambitious goals. Inspired by the continuous flow of work in meatpacking plants, the team of Ford Motors dared to implement a revolutionary idea: the moving assembly line. In 1913, at his Highland Park plant in Detroit, Ford introduced this groundbreaking system. The chassis moved along a conveyor belt, and each worker performed a single, repetitive task as the car passed by. The process initially involved pulling the chassis with a rope, later evolving to a more efficient moving chain mechanism. Moreover, the approach heavily relied on the use of interchangeable parts, a concept that significantly reduced the dependence on highly skilled labor. This method altogether was viewed as a significant risk back then. It required a massive overhaul of the factory and a complete rethinking of the production process. There was no guarantee it would work, and many likely doubted its success. The development of this system was not instantaneous, but involved considerable experimentation and refinement by Ford and his dedicated team. However, the gamble paid off tremendously. The assembly line dramatically reduced the time it took to build a Model T from over 12 hours to just 93 minutes. Production soared, and the price of the Model T decreased from $850 to $360, making it affordable for millions of Americans. Ford's vision was becoming a reality. Ford's assembly line was not an entirely novel invention, but rather an ingenious combination and adaptation of existing ideas from various industries, expertly applied to the unique challenges of automobile manufacturing. However, this revolutionary efficiency came at a human cost. The work on the assembly line was monotonous and repetitive. Workers performed the same simple task over and over again, leading to boredom, dissatisfaction, and a staggering 370% annual labor turnover rate by late 1913. This constant need to hire and train new workers was expensive and hindered productivity to a great extent. The expense associated with this constant churn of labor threatened to negate the very efficiency gains that the assembly line was intended to deliver. To combat this crisis, on January 5, 1914, Ford made another bold move. He announced a wage increase from $2.34 to $5 per day for an 8-hour workday. This more than doubled the previous wage and was unheard of at the time. Many critics thought this would bankrupt the company. Instead, the $5 wage had a transformative effect. Worker turnover plummeted dramatically, falling from 370% in 1913 to just 54% in 1914, and even further, to 16% by 1915. The best mechanics and laborers flocked to Detroit to work for Ford Motors for these high-paying jobs, therefore transforming the city into a major industrial hub. Productivity increased, and Ford's profits doubled within 2 years. Nevertheless, this substantial wage increase came with certain conditions. The pay raise was structured as a profit-sharing bonus, with a base wage of $2.30 and an additional $2.70 contingent upon meeting certain company standards. Eligibility for this bonus was determined by the Ford Sociological Department, which investigated workers' personal lives to ensure they adhered to the company's moral and behavioral expectations. These requirements included abstaining from alcohol, maintaining a clean home, avoiding abusive behavior, and demonstrating financial prudence. Ford himself recognized the strategic brilliance of this decision. He famously said, "The owner, the employees, and the buying public are all one and the same, and unless an industry can so manage itself as to keep wages high and prices low, it destroys itself, for otherwise it limits the number of its customers. One's own employees ought to be one's own best customers." By paying his workers a better wage, Ford enabled them to afford his cars, creating a larger market and fueling further growth. On a broader scale, Ford's wage policy set a new benchmark for the manufacturing industry across the United States, influencing other companies to improve their own compensation packages. This contributed to the development of a consumer-driven economy, where higher wages empowered more people to purchase goods and services. Notably, intending to further improve operational efficiency, Ford implemented the 5-day, 40-hour work week in 1926, a move that would become a standard across industries. However, despite the higher wages, worker satisfaction remained a persistent challenge due to the repetitive nature of the work. The decades that followed witnessed the eventual rise of labor unions in the automotive industry, advocating for improved working conditions and greater worker rights. For much of its early production run, especially from around 1910 to the early 1920s, the Model T was essentially the only car Ford produced. It reached the 15 millionth unit milestone on May 26, 1927, which was also the last day of its production. The Model T significantly changed the lives of millions of people back then, even in some unexpected ways. It made dating more private by giving young couples the freedom to escape parental supervision and spend time alone together. With greater mobility, people could travel beyond their immediate neighborhoods to meet potential partners at dances, dinners, or social events. This newfound independence helped reshape American courtship, making it more centered around individual choice and romantic exploration. The story of Henry Ford's production line and the $5 day wage is a powerful example of how innovation, while initially risky, can lead to tremendous success in different aspects. It also highlights the crucial relationship between technological advancement, the workforce, and economic prosperity. It also indicates how one major change can spark a chain of other changes to come.